Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, we're going to take a look at commercial excellence in services at Schneider Electric. I'm excited to welcome back Ravichandra KSHIRSAGAR, who is Commercial Vice President for Microgrid across Europe and International for the Digital Energy Division of Schneider Electric. Ravichandra, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. Happy to be here. And since we last spoke, actually, my title has changed now. So it
Okay.
is Digital Energy Services VP, but that doesn't change the podcast. I mean, we are going to focus on commercial excellence in services and talk broadly about it.
Okay,
Happy to
great.
be back.
Yes, it's good to have you back. Your last appearance on the podcast was at our Paris event in 2023. Obviously, a lot has changed. So Ravi Chandra and I had a conversation recently around the commercial excellence in field service study that Future of Field Service and Simon and Kucher conducted late last year. And Ravi Chandra had some thoughts on the research and how it relates to his work at Schneider and his observation of services and the landscape. So that's what we're going to talk through today. So, good point on the title change. There's been a lot that has happened in the almost 3 years since you were on last. So, if you don't mind, state again the current title and just talk about what your focus is now at Schneider.
So broadly, been with Schneider more than 15 years, and I'm a commercial leader at heart. So I love working with people, customers, and happy to be back in services. So I was kind of working on this piloting and launching this business of microgrid in Europe and international, where we were helping our customers to build a more resilient energy strategy, especially with what is happening with the war and cost and energy prices, and especially move that towards sustainability, integrating battery energy storage system and a much more intelligent AI-driven energy management platform. So really enjoyed that space, high competency, specialized business, worked with logo customers, build the channel from scratch, and happy to lead into now digital energy services. So as a digital energy services VP global, my role is really focused on software and services strategy, where we obviously execute more projects, then we attach those projects to our digital AI platform and build this life cycle relationship with our customers with building and power management platform, where we help them modernize, digitize, and really deliver more value and outcomes when it comes to energy efficiency, resilient operations, cybersecurity, sustainability, net zero outcomes, and obviously comfort when it comes to people in those buildings. So that's my core focus. Within that, I'll be sharpening the strategy when we look at our customer base, especially segment focus. So we are looking at AI data center as a major growth opportunity, life sciences, vaccine production,
Mm-hmm.
all of that, healthcare, hospitals, commercial real estate when it comes to building all of that, independent data platform, building apps for occupants as well as maintenance manager, energy managers. So really broad spectrum of those segments that are looking for to move beyond maintenance to outcome-based services.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be my focus. And then further, when we look at our own operations, looking at our sales functions, and if I broadly divide it into two, how we serve our customer and how we build our back office machine, right? So how we serve our customer is going to be more about, the same sales folks driving, creating demand, where we are able to not only deliver and build those outcomes around our customers, but deliver them as well, especially when it comes to digital and AI. And then likewise, our back office, especially the operating model for services of the future. So how do we integrate AI into that and become more efficient, productive, and also customer oriented when it comes to delivering those outcomes? So, for example, a function like customer success in the way that exists today versus next 3 to 5 years that has to transform.
Yeah.
So that's going to be my mandate and focus. Yeah, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. I think it's also really helpful when you have that opportunity, like you did over the last couple of years, to go and lead a different function, a different focus. It's a great way to get some new perspective, and just see different things, observe different things, and that always is helpful in the context of leading services, right? Because it just augments your understanding of what's going on in the market and what, folks are focused on. So I know you had some thoughts on the Simon and Kucher research that we partnered with them on. So one of the points I wanted to talk about is the research showed an overwhelmingly positive view around the ability to differentiate through service as well as using it as a lever for growth. So, what are your observations on that positivity, and what does this look like for Schneider?
Well, services, when we look at the market landscape out there, and if you're looking at just products business, if I can talk in different three, four different dimensions, right? I mean, the basic dimension is today, if you are just a product seller in the market, how do you differentiate? How do you differentiate with the customers that you have built? How do you create that trust? How do you deliver performance? How do you deliver outcomes?
Hmm.
As we move towards that digital AI shift, it is about services. The central piece over there is services, and services is about that life cycle partnerships with your customers, where you build that system for them, a project for them, and then stay with them for that 15, 20 years period to help them get the best outcome out of what you have delivered, right? And the commitment and promise that you made,
Hmm.
how do you build and create that trust, maintain that trust over that 20-year period? I'm just talking about a horizon. But it's really that's the foundation of why any company should be looking at services as a strategic lever. So that's number one. Number two, financially, it just makes sense. I mean, if you look at a pure products driven capital goods company, the enterprise value would be 1x to maximum 2x revenue multiple, depending on how differentiated they are in their current market and the future outlook of that market. But when you look at a services or digital AI-driven company, that multiple could go from 4 to 6x to somewhere like 25x, yeah, depending on the mix of software AI that is part of the portfolio. So you just see that financially it makes sense as a company to invest in services. And the third one I would say is it's such a massive opportunity, right? I mean, why would you do a project and leave money on the table? Why would you do that? I mean, and today it's not about companies or customers are not looking at a company that would come and deliver products to them. What they are looking for is partnership. They are looking for, if I just take the example of data centers, AI data centers, right?
Hmm.
That's a massive growth opportunity. The minimum growth rate any company should expect there is 30% year over year. So here, those hyperscalers and regional global colocation players, they are not looking for companies that will supply products. They are looking for companies that will help them design, that will help them build, maintain, operate, and not just in one country, across the enterprise, which could be across country, across continents, across the globe.
Hmm.
So, and then based on how you execute one site, two site, 20 sites, you are getting into the new sites based on the experience and the customer experience that you provide. So it just makes sense. And it's such a massive opportunity to invest in your own workforce, people, competency development. So for services, the shift just happens from pure structure cost driven investment to direct variable investment, which is linked to those customer contracts that you build, right? So you create more jobs, more
Hmm.
market opportunity for your people as well. And it's an unbelievable opportunity. I mean, I take pleasure in services because you stay with customers, you listen to them, you go so deep in their processes, the way they work, the people, the way they behave, right? How they operate that system, how they should be operating that system, and how should we build the next system. So that investment in the roadmap also comes from that insight
Hmm.
that you get spending time with those customers and getting deep into their processes. That cannot happen if you're just doing pure product or capex business, because that's where the shift happens, right? So
Yeah.
There are multiple, dimensions in the way I think about services, and those are some of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you said is spot on, and the only thought I had when you were talking about, the understanding of that potential and the fact that customers are looking for, partnership, not products, is accurate. I think where it gets tricky for a lot of organizations is to realize that potential. You not only have to see it, you have to be able to execute well, right? And I think that's where
Absolutely.
there are a lot of companies that are struggling to catch up to the ability to execute on, more of a partnership or outcomes-based model in a way that does build that trust and maintain those relationships. So I think people understand. That's why we see there's positivity. People understand it. But then, the next section of the research goes into the challenges that are in the way of organizations realizing that potential.
No, it's really important to understand that, and to address that is not easy because all companies out there are organized based on product units, business units. So you got this distributed, decision power that is out there. And for services, you don't look from a product roadmap to the market. You look from the market customer, and then you bring it inwards, right?
Hmm.
So you need to organize around your customer. You don't organize around your product, your process, your platform, which is a strategy which will just lead to a defeat in the market. So that's a very important part where how
Yeah.
do you look at that opportunity and how do you get organized? And when you look at that opportunity from your customer's perspective, from the segment perspective, you're able to better organize the value proposition, you're able to better organize your operations, you're able to put those competent people and platform to address that. Competency is a very big part, and competency today is not just somebody doing a service on a product. Competency is somebody providing a service and outcome which is aligned to what customer needs and which is different. Same product, acts very differently in a data center versus a commercial real estate. The
Hmm.
same, the criticality, the critical nature of the business is very different. So the
Yeah.
way people behave, act is very different. So that needs to be taken into account. And then the other part which comes to mind is, look, CapEx is a very cyclical business. If your P&L is built on CapEx, I mean, you're going to have those up and down cycles, right, in your business. So the only way to smoothen out that curve is investing on services and creating recurring revenue as a big part of your revenue mix, which
Hmm.
I think the guys at SKP are very much focused on helping companies. So yeah, I think it's a very
Yeah.
interesting area.
Yeah. So when we think about that challenge, right? So there's this overall positive outlook, certainly a recognition of the potential that's there. But then in the report we get into some of these challenges. And one that I wanted to ask you a bit more about is what you mentioned, sort of creating that customer-centric value proposition, because this is, I think, a lot of organizations are struggling with this, with modernizing that value proposition. They're looking at really the digital disruption as a detractor of revenue because they aren't looking at how they incorporate that into a more holistic view of what's possible. So, what are your thoughts on this and how to take that customer centric view and then marry it with what an organization can, you know, create, articulate, price, and execute in a way that's advantageous?
Yeah, so number one, look, there are two things over here. Number one is the product that you design. Is it designed for service? And the second, how well do you know your customer? So how well you know your install base, right? So the two are linked in a way, and then you can create value on top of that, whether it's about offer, price, and getting that higher value versus what competition or the market probably is delivering on that
Mhm.
same offer, right? So number one, at the onset, when we are looking at products and when we are looking at platforms, it has to be designed for service. And what does that mean, designed for service? Designed for service is you're not thinking about services and how you're going to maintain that product and platform as an afterthought. You're really thinking that as a core of your product strategy or platform strategy. For example, a building management system like EcoStruxure for buildings, the way you would look at that is the way your customer, a maintenance manager or energy manager or sustainability manager, what are the type of outcomes he's looking at? What are the type of dashboards he should be looking at? If he has to make set point changes, how can we make those in the easiest possible manner? If he has to program certain things, how can we simplify it for them with our services approach, right? Continuous commissioning, then the digital layer. So the way we looked at that problem is not just providing a platform, but providing kind of a registration and connection tool that helps us understand how the customer is implementing that as a system, and then understanding on top of that, how can we help him with outcome-based, condition-based insights to help him get best out of that platform that he has implemented, whether it's a data center customer, a life sciences customer, or a healthcare customer, right? And all of these customers already have challenges in terms of manpower and what they need to get out of it. So that's the first part, which is um, designing your product or platform for services. And the second part, then, with that design for services, you need to make sure that you know your customer very well. So one part of it is maintaining that install base. So understanding what system is implemented and what changes have been made to that system, and having that live information, right? Whether it's in the cloud or through another link that you have with the customer. And then all the interventions and support that you have provided to that customer in a one proper, whether it's the customer value platform or value report,
Hmm.
that helps you really understand that what's my platform doing and what's the customer getting out of it. And then in terms of that, it helps you when you get to that next renewal cycle with your contract, the expansion cycle, the modernization, because with that install base, now you have released a new version.
Hmm.
And that new version, because of these cyber security risks, could bring X and Y value to your customer, and he should know about it. And that's why he should upgrade or modernize to that latest version, right? So it becomes a life cycle conversation and not a transactional relationship where you're going back and forth on a new product that you're launching or a new, some magic bullet that you're bringing.
Yeah.
And that conversation happens on a platform. And then pricing becomes a secondary part where you attach that pricing to the value.
Hmm.
Where, okay, now this new version that is coming is going to deliver you X value. So over a period of time, you're not talking about transactional price based on every upgrade that you deliver. You talk about value, about subscription of that software.
Hmm.
And then the customer understands that over a longer period of time with that subscription, this is the value he's going to get, whether it's about energy outcomes, sustainability outcomes, cybersecurity outcomes, comfort outcomes. And he can expect that not only through the major version changes, but also through everything that comes in patches, right? The
Hmm.
patchwork or the implement. And all of that implementation will be done by us.
Hmm.
So that's been a big factor. Now, not all customers will go in that direction, but if you go with your 50, 60% of your customers, that's already a big win, especially those that are operating in a critical environment where one cybersecurity risk can create a risk on entire business,
Hmm.
where OT and IT is coming together and creating those new risk areas that customers need to address. So
Yeah.
that's where that value really talks to those customers. And you really need to be targeted, right? Back to the commercial excellence
Hmm.
topic. You cannot go broadly and expect every customer to buy into it. You really need to tailor your message and target them based on what value you're going to deliver. And I think I see a big avenue, when I look at segments, data centers, I keep coming back, life sciences, healthcare.
Hmm.
These are the guys you should target for. We should target for oil and gas. There are others. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even in a service, context where it isn't software driven, the concept is the same. It's that shift from transactional business being, truck rolls, hours, et cetera, to one that is driven by the value being delivered, right? And I think that is
Absolutely. Yeah.
such a hard mindset shift for people to get. Like they just really feel that, customers won't be willing to pay if the value is achieved in a different manner, meaning like it isn't achieved just through a technician, arriving on site, et cetera. And I think that that's just such a trap of, you know, not going back to what you said, not knowing your customers well enough. If you think they're not willing to pay for it, then you don't understand their challenges or their pain points well enough, or you're not engaging at the right level to understand those challenges or pain points, and then articulating the value in a way that speaks to those.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you're differentiating is a big factor, and it's not, if you look at future of service, it's not going to be about selling a product and a
Hmm.
truck roll. I mean, anyone can do that. You can be in business for 100 years or 100 days. Both of
Hmm.
you can deliver the same thing. So where's the differentiation?
Yeah.
Where's the differentiation about services is not going to be about fixing product issues, break fixes. Services is going to be about maximizing outcomes for
Hmm.
the customers.
Yeah.
And maximizing outcomes is not an area which every company in the market has actually mastered.
Right.
And this is what differentiates us or any big player that is uh, passionate, focused, invested in services. Their
Hmm.
focus cannot be on, I'll fix a product, I will have spare parts, and then I'll have somebody rolling the truck. Because
Yeah.
then you get into that bottleneck where you're competing with a system integrator or a player in the market that will compete with you on price, and you're not
Right.
going to maximize your value with the customer. And why do you want to be with a customer that is looking for that value prop? So let them be with those players
Right.
because you're going to spend your commercial effort on something that's not going to give you outcomes.
Yeah.
So it's important where, in terms of focus as to, first the services vision and strategy has to be very clear that what do you want to be as a services player to your customers? What
Hmm.
are the outcomes or what are the things that your customers should be expecting from you when they are partnering with you about services? And what is your services commitment and promise and trust element that you want to build? And then it's always going to remain about people. The truck role will be required, but then how armored or how competent your service technician, your service engineer is versus anyone that goes on site, right?
Hmm.
Anyone else. So here, I mean, your platform, your design for product, your design for service is very important. So even you may or may not be delivering that software driven or digital service model, but then differentiating on that product value with your competent technician value in terms of the
Hmm.
procedure they follow, how they behave with customers, how they arrive on site, what type of checklist they bring, what type of not only break fix but the improvement opportunities they are able to
Hmm.
find,
Yeah.
right, which helps get those outcomes in a much more organized manner and also able to quantify the dollar value of that outcome. All that is very important. So
Yeah.
but I always believe every company out there, if they're in a product business and they have to think about a way where they understand what that product is delivering in the customer environment.
Hmm.
They have to find a way. I mean, if they don't know what that product is doing in a customer environment, that's the first door that you are closing because that door has to be open and then you need to enter that door to unlock other doors of value
Right.
uh, that helps you maximize that life cycle value with your customer.
Yeah. And this evolution that you just described really well, a part of that is that roles are shifting, right? So the role of the technician or the engineer, it's no longer just to arrive on site to diagnose and repair an issue or fix something that's broken. And there are new roles, right, that are entering the mix. And so when we caught up recently, you shared with me that Schneider has introduced a relatively new role called the customer performance engineer. So can you talk a little bit about, the catalyst for that, some of the details around what that job description is, and how that fits into this vision of service today and in the future?
Yeah, so two or three things. Look, the way we are reimagining our services in the 3 to 5 years is that 70-80% of our installed base will be connected to the cloud layer. It will be AI enabled to provide those outcomes. So that's number one. We want to make sure that we know our customers really well and we know how we can bring them value in terms of that, maintaining that system, product value and delivering outcomes. So that's number one. Number two, we are reimagining our operating model for services, especially continuing to grow services, but probably not linearly increasing the manpower, right, that is required to get to that revenue number. And there's a reason for that. I mean, it's not because we don't want to hire more. It's because there is lack of talent in the market. I mean, if I just look at US, there are 200,000 open HVAC controls positions, 200,000 only in the US. So you cannot get the talent in the market because the opportunity out there is so big. There are so many data centers getting constructed. There are so many sustainability projects that there is a dearth of this critical talent that is required. So reimagining that operating model, especially how you deliver that service and how you bring value to your customers with obviously the digital AI element, which is core to that, but also that competency people element is very important. So when you bring that those two elements together and you have that life cycle value, now you have digital. Let's imagine a customer that has already invested in your software and AI platform. And then when we look at that customer install base, we started to realize that we can bring them much more, than what we are doing with them in terms of platform. So a customer that is engaging with Schneider on building management system, we are now getting into power management and, helping them, especially on power monitoring on disparate assets across a critical building or a data center. Then we are getting into power quality, which is a big challenge, especially as we start integrating renewable sources into, different assets, buildings, because that back and forth of energy creates imbalance in the frequencies, and that creates a bigger challenge for our customers. So these are just examples, right? And then we are able to fine tune the system, help them, invest in higher outcomes, especially with AI. So for that, when we looked at our, let's say, a layer of 100 technicians that are servicing that installed base, we realized that we need to create this upper layer that helps us not only look at that installed base in much more strategic manner, not only about today, but tomorrow, day after tomorrow, how do we help our customers get the best outcome out of that system? And then here what we do is we start with a basic audit to then going into advanced reporting analytics. Based on that information, we are able to kind of create a customer summary of key areas to address, as well as the type of outcomes they can expect if they implement those recommendations. And here we created a layer of engineers from that pool of service technicians that were able to go into that details, depth, rigor, and build very customer focused, customer adapted recommendation summary that helped us, grow that trust with our customers and also deliver outcomes that they wanted, right? And the customers have been very happy. And also it gave a new path for service technicians to grow into, right? I was looking at 1 to 5 customers. I built that competency. Now I'm looking at a portfolio, and over a portfolio, I'm able to share good practices and drive those outcomes, right? And I'm able to coach a layer which is below, which is much more meaningful. So that's in a nutshell, the role is I would say it's a customer success, but even more deeper in terms of that vertical competency around building power management, energy management. So competency is very important, and then much more rigorous in terms of how data and analytics AI helps them get to that the recommendation layer. So these recommendations are not some fluffy 3 to 5 bullets, right? They are very deep into how they have understood the customer install base, what the customer is looking to get, how they are going to build the site over the next 2, 3 years, so how they can, create that plan. So very detailed, deep work that happens with these performance engineers.
So they're interfacing with customers directly?
Yeah, they're working directly with the customers
Hmm.
and also with service technicians. And they are kind of linked to the head of facilities, head of maintenance, head of sustainability, whether at a site or at the portfolio. So it's a very new role. We started piloting in Australia. We are looking
Hmm.
at piloting in other countries where we have a bigger install base. And it's also an incentive for us to digitize and move our install base more and more towards AI.
Hmm. Yeah.
So the more data we pull, the more outcomes we can build. But to build those outcomes, we need to bring in this competency layer,
Yeah.
which is built around rigor.
Yeah. Which kind of brings us to our next point. Going back to the research, there was a lot of insights that reinforced the need to both ensure a strong digital foundation as well as look for these opportunities of where it's advantageous to weave in more intelligence and scalability using AI. So, how do you see these advancements in the digital landscape changing, I guess, both the commercial and the operational sides of the business?
Well, when we so just taking notes. There are two parts, right? I mean, when we look at digital AI, commercial element and the operational element. So if I look at commercial element, uh, when we look at the market opportunity out there, obviously there are customers that are looking for service today, like data centers, but there are customers where you need to create demand, right? So selling or it's not about selling into your customer. It's really not that transactional relationship. It's demand creation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're with those customers and you have that relationship, obviously with AI, digital, that commercial relationship just goes to the next level because it's able to understand your interaction with that customer for last 1, 3 years. It's able to extract all that information, understands where the install base, and then able to recommend to you what is the type of path that you need to recommend. And I think we are on that journey today.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's the one part, right? When you're looking at that enterprise sales model. Now, if you just draw that triangle, so you have enterprise customers at the top, your biggest customers. You have those country-led customers in the middle, and then have the diffuse or the customers that are out there, but you cannot reach them directly. I think here the digital AI coverage model really helps,
Mm-hmm.
especially how you connect with your biggest customers versus how you connect with your many customers that bring you a smaller dollar opportunity with inside sales and digital sales element. And there are some, piloting that we are looking at with people.ai initiative, going after each of those opportunities and making
Mm-hmm.
sure we have a solution that addresses that in terms of efficiency, sales efficiency, and effectiveness. So how efficient are we in covering the market opportunity, the install base opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
And then how effective are we in terms of getting that dollar opportunity? So if we are connected with $1, how can we get that $3 to $5 opportunity
Mm-hmm.
with that coverage commercial model, right? So that's the basic of it. And then when it comes to operations, what I mentioned before, right? I mean, in terms of operating model, and here, I mean, we are at a stage where we are piloting different elements, like with the service techs, with customer success model, with the planners, how we plan our service techs, the planned preventative maintenance visits. So at that point, I mean, I will speak to you more about the operating model of the future, which is 3 to 5 years down the line. And I'm looking at companies, not only Schneider Electric, but the companies that are out there and that are innovating on that side. I mean, the opportunity here is really to reimagine the entire operating model of
Mm-hmm.
services and looking at that operating model from the AI-enabled lens. And what that does is obviously it number one, it helps you understand which are the areas, customer touch points where you need to bring in that competency and invest in those areas,
Mm-hmm.
and which are those areas where you should not be investing in terms of your structure dollar, and you should be reimagining that as more like an AI driven or AI agent driven approach,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the area to invest is really about that competency, right? All customers out there are looking for deep competency. when they sit with us and our people, they are looking for Schneider Electric in terms of value we can bring to them, not only to maintain what exists today, but what they want to build for the future,
Mm-hmm.
and really, bring that best dollar to value equation to them. So that's going to stay. But if you look at the operating model, and I take a simple role like planner, right? Planner, and planner is a role which exists in most of the companies that are out there in services. So planner is a person which helps you schedule your technicians to go to site. And for me, it's not the best investment of your dollar.
Right.
While it helps you, obviously prioritize your customers and prioritize where your people spend time. But we are in a business where we have a lot of smart people, and our techs know, how to schedule themselves. If they tell them that this week this is the load they need to manage. But then with the AI agent-driven planner, what it does is it reduces that transaction between
Mm-hmm.
customer, your technician, and really finds the best outcomes. So if you have a technician that has to visit, five customers in that week, and it is able to look at distances, time traveled, when did he see that last customer, when was the last customer visit, when is the next expected, what are the breakdowns or issues that are seen on site, what is the dollar opportunity, what is the customer value opportunity, and it's able to schedule a technician based on that, which is
Right.
much more intelligent than whatever a planner could do, looking just at calendars.
Mm-hmm.
And it is able to do that, without creating too many email, WhatsApp, all these transactions that happen, phone calls.
Yeah.
That's also very important. It's able to integrate into your customer's calendar, your technician's
Mm-hmm.
calendar. So very big value. But then just stepping back a bit, this requires reimagining the operating model and then picking today. If I look at today, if you reimagine the operating model, you need to pick up 3 to 5 areas that you're going to pilot and go deep into.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of them. And then, customer success is another one of them where, you go deep into that, into reporting and what value you can bring,
Mm-hmm.
and then build on that, step by step to make sure that you have mastered that area before you go into other 3 areas, right? That's my way of looking at
Yeah.
things. I'm
Yeah.
not someone who would like to, completely go at 10 things and not do any of them well, not able to measure the outcome, impact of those. So I prefer going in a way where we have done 3 things well, then the next 3 things, and then that way we don't confuse the organization, we keep the focus, and we are able to measure the impact of those
Mm-hmm.
initiatives that we have implemented. So
Yeah.
yeah, big value on commercial operational element.
Yeah, but the planning and scheduling example is a really good one of being practical and pragmatic about looking at where are we leveraging human capital in a way that, technology can very, well, probably better than they can, accomplish. And so it doesn't mean, that you don't redeploy those people somewhere or you don't still need some of them to handle exceptions and whatnot. It just means that you're identifying those areas within your operations where there are just, inefficiencies and manual processes that can be rectified if you use today's, digital solutions. And I think the point you made though about, the bigger picture is being willing to reimagine, the process altogether. I wrote an article recently about the distinction that I think is crucial for service leaders right now between optimization and amplification. I think companies get stuck in this trap of looking at, digital AI, et cetera. How can we incrementally improve upon what we're doing? What is the next, way to improve the existing, landscape? And, AI in so many ways really allows you to rip up what has been and start fresh on what's possible. And when we relate that back to all of the points you made about the outcomes driven models and the partnerships and making sure that you understand what your customers want and need and you are designing solutions to meet those needs. What is possible using AI is completely different than what was possible, a couple of years ago. And based on the workforce challenges, what's possible, leveraging people power or manpower. So we are at this point where, we can't look at how we improve upon the existing playbook. We really need to think
Yeah.
about creating a brand new playbook to work from. So,
No, absolutely. I think, look, uh, existing playbook is, in my mind, becoming irrelevant.
mhm,
Although, yeah, I mean, it doesn't stop you from piloting certain areas now because there is a
mhm.
short-term expectation as well.
Yeah.
But it is definitely becoming irrelevant because AI-enabled services will be the default expectations
Hmm.
of your organization and your customers and the market. It will decide who wins in the market. You're not the
Hmm.
only one.
Yeah.
Market is not in vacuum. We are not in the only one. So if we don't do it, somebody else will do it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's better be, us doing it and us winning that market and market share and the customer mind share, right?
Hmm.
That's a very important part. And one thing I want to really stress on is this area of reimagine. It requires, people who are very deep, they are rigorous, and they understand the customer environment really well.
Hmm.
Most times you have people who are dealing with these operating model type of topic that do not understand the business, they do not understand the customer dynamics, they have not spent enough time there, they don't understand the journey of their own product and life cycle. And then the level of rigor that is required over there is sometimes missing.
Hmm.
I think it's very important over there to really understand deeply your customer environment, your offer life cycle, platform, evolution linked to that customer segment needs, and then the market shift that needs to happen with your operating model,
Yeah.
and being very rigorous about that exercise, not do it, just in one go. Or I think it needs to be done with different workshops with different stakeholders
Yeah.
from your own organization, from external organizations,
Yeah.
consultant that could help you look at it differently. So that level of rigor is extremely important, right? And then piloting that on a small set of customers is also helpful to tell you that whether you're going in the
Hmm.
right direction or you need to recalibrate, pivot towards something else.
Yeah.
Because you may not be right, or you're not going to be right in all the things that you plan at the onset, but you'll need to calibrate that over different iterations that you will do with your customers.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point, Ravichandra. What it made me think of is, there's a real risk if you think about what I just said about like optimization versus amplification and this idea of, to your point, service leaders are tasked with continuing to operate within the day-to-day that exists right now, but also reimagining for and we're not talking future 10, 15 years. We're talking soon, right? But you
Yeah,
have to be able to do both of those. But I think there's a real risk of going through that reimagination process through the lens of the technology and tools, not the customer and the business. And I think that is a huge, huge risk because ultimately, the most important rigor, the most important part to understand and get right is what matters to our customers and how is our
yeah,
business uniquely positioned to deliver that. Then how can today's, AI and digital intelligence help us do that? There's such a risk of just leading with the technology because people feel
yeah.
pressure that, we have to get into AI, we have to do this, right? And not having that perspective that you mentioned all the way back at the beginning of the customer wants, the customer needs, the customer challenges to lead that.
Yeah, and the point there is, look, every company out there is delivering some kind of outcome, right? The
Mhm.
point is not whether you're delivering outcome to one or two customers. The point is how can you deliver outcomes and that same customer experience to all the customers?
Mhm.
the big ones, the VIPs to the diffused ones. I mean, I won't say that the same value, but the experience has to be somewhere similar. What he's expecting versus what he's getting.
Yeah.
If you have 100 customers, enterprise, they all should be getting that same level of service, and it should not differentiate or change based on the person that is seeing that customer. So how do you create that unique system which brings together technology process, which is about that tools, operating model, and people, right?
Hmm.
Competent people to deliver that customer value, which is around value prop of each customer segment. Data
Yeah.
center gets a different value versus a healthcare versus a hotel. Very different customers, different types of services they are looking at.
Hmm.
That entire system is very important. I think where AI and digital should help us get to is, having that uniform or that higher level of value where the minimum value also is very good for that customer,
Hmm.
which is not the case today.
Yeah.
Not every customer is satisfied, and we can measure that through revenue outcome, through customer satisfaction outcome, the pull-through outcome,
Hmm.
obviously improvement in profitability. So all of those should be signs of whether that is happening or not.
Hmm. Yeah, really great points. I know we're out of time, but thank you so much, Ravichandra, for coming back and talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Was a pleasure. Thanks, Sarah. Was a
Yes.
pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime soon.
Sure.
You can learn more by visiting the home of Unscripted at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.ai. As always, thank you for listening.